Hi everybody, this is Katje, welcoming you to a new video this evening. Tonight I want to tell a story, then I want to relate this story to some things that are going on in the world and especially the United States today. Finally, I would like to share some feelings that I have about this story and the connection to these events today, and try to be very honest about that. So, my story begins when I was growing up and would sometimes visit my grandmother and my grandfather who lived in rural Virginia. Sometimes in the summer they had a porch, a screened-in porch, and so my grandparents and my family, my uncles and aunts, would gather on this porch, this screened-in porch, sometimes on a summer evening, and they would tell all kinds of stories. Lots of wonderful stories from their own past and things that were going on in their lives and at the time and also when they were children. But they also would sometimes tell some things that as a child I found rather disturbing. So I remember in particular one night the conversation turned to religion, which is not uncommon in the rural South. So people were talking about the end times, when the world would end, and what would be the signs of that. So I must have been about maybe 10 or 11, I can't remember exactly how old I was, but they were talking about things that they believed were in the Bible, or maybe that they had heard some minister or preacher talk about. I remember in particular there was a story about how there would be, based on some things that very opaque and obscure things that are written in the book of Revelation, that there would be a final battle of good versus evil. I'm sure many of you have heard of this as Armageddon. So this is sort of like eschatology, Christian eschatology, one part of it, and in some circles people speculate about that quite seriously. So anyway, they were talking about this battle of Armageddon and how the forces of good, represented by Christ, would meet the forces of evil, represented by the Antichrist, which is either Satan or maybe the son of Satan. It depends on the interpretation. But anyway, this battle would take place and there would be a lot of carnage. A lot of people would die, and that would be the end of the world. It would then usher in the second coming of Christ, or the final judgment. So what for me as a child, I found this very disturbing. It was very unsettling. I remember one of my aunts was talking about how there was an indication that the vultures were gathering in the Middle East, which many people interpreted as a sign of this imminent battle where there would be many corpses and the vultures would then be there to consume them. So as a young person, as a child, I found all of this very disturbing. And as I've grown older, although I am a religious person, I try not to worry too much about when the end times will come or anything like that, because I think it's more important to live in the moment and try to be a faithful and a kind person, and then the rest of those things will take care of themselves. But that's the story. The story that I wanted to tell is just basically a reminiscence about these summer nights on that screened-in porch at my grandparents' house in Virginia, where these somewhat disturbing stories about the end times were being told. Now, what I want to do next is relate this to some things that are going on in the world today, and especially in the United States, in the political situation that we have in this country. Now, I think that it's something that a lot of people on the left side of the spectrum don't really understand about people, not everybody, but a lot of people who support Donald Trump and support the Republican Party the way it's become today. And I don't want to get into a political rant or anything like that. I'm simply trying to be honest and share a few reflections here. So in certain parts of the country, like the South, and the rural Midwest of this country. Obviously, Trump has a lot of supporters. These are people who seem not to be concerned about the dishonesty, the lies that this man has told, the very insulting comments that he has made repeatedly. He's lied repeatedly. He's a misogynist. He seems to be homophobic and transphobic. But also, beyond all of those things which may concern you and me, there are other things that really should concern any person who believes in the importance of this country and wants to make sure that it's safeguarded and protected. And so, regardless of what political persuasion you are, it seems to me that you would want to make sure that this country is not being attacked by enemies like Russia, foreign countries that are trying to subvert or undermine our electoral process. And if you felt that there was the remotest possibility that a country like Russia, say, was trying to do that, you would want to stop it or have an investigation or get to the bottom of it and not worry about how much time it took or what was necessary in order to get to the truth of the matter within reason. Now, what continues to amaze me, and it was something that I was driven home to me recently when I had to spend a considerable amount of time in Tennessee because of my mother's passing. A lot of people there and in other parts of the country who support this person don't really seem to be too concerned about this apparent attempt on the part of the Russian government to infiltrate and interfere, tamper with our electoral system in the 2018 election and probably in the next election as well. So that got me to thinking about why is that? And again, I don't want to broad brush, but I think that in a lot of cases, in many cases, I worry that some of this religious belief or obsession with the end times is interfering with these people's judgment about this matter. So it doesn't really matter to them that Trump is a liar or that he's a misogynist, or even worse, in some ways, that he is that he trusts a foreign government, the leader of a foreign government, more than his own intelligence community. When Putin is saying, "Well, my government didn't have anything to do, didn't make any attempt to interfere in your electoral system," but the intelligence community in the United States is unanimously of the opinion that is what happened. So why is it that these people who support the president so deeply don't appear to be concerned about that? And what worries me is that because they feel, on some level, they seem to feel that this person, this president, despite his lying and the egregious behavior that he's exhibited repeatedly, they seem to think that he's an instrument of God. They seem to think that whatever he does or doesn't do is okay because it seems to be ushering in the end times when there will be this final confrontation between the forces of good and evil. And so in addition to being willing to tolerate his bad behavior because of their own political agenda, they want to get rid of Roe versus Wade, they want to curtail or even eliminate rights for gay and transgender people, or at least reverse some of the recent decisions that were more favorable towards that. Because of all those things, not only because of that, though, but because many of them seem to believe that this person is an instrument of the divine will, and so if he colludes or tolerates the attempt of the Russian government to interfere in our election, that's okay. That's okay, as long as it hastens the final confrontation, the Armageddon battle between the forces of good and evil, and that will then usher in the second coming of Christ, and everything will be good. And I guess a lot of these people feel that they will then be among the elect. So this kind of thinking, it seems to me, is very difficult to get at. It isn't really a rational thing. It's not so much that it's irrational, it's that it's beyond reason and unreason. It's non-rational. It's a very deep belief, deep-seated belief that many of these people seem to have. And some of you may remember from an earlier video that I made that the promise of reason to sort of compel people to accept the truth, this idea or this picture of reason that philosophically goes all the way back to Plato, seems to me to be really not very accurate, because if reason were so successful at doing that, then we would not have so much disagreement about these things, and everybody would more or less by now, after 2,000 or more years, agree about, at least in general, about the truth of the matter in a number of issues, and that's not the case. So what I want to do finally is just share some of my reflections about, well, what should I do about that? What should we do about it? And I'm going to confess here that I don't really have any answers, because I feel of two minds. So I'm going to conclude my video tonight by telling you those two different attitudes that I find in myself sometimes, and that I don't really know what to do with except wait and see how things work out. So one attitude I have is very pessimistic, and it is that in recent years, what we are seeing in this country is a decay of any kind of fundamental consensus about what needs to be done in order to make the country better, in order to solve the problems facing the country, and to compromise. Not everybody is going to get everything that he or she wants, but we will, at least when there was some kind of consensus, we would try to work together to figure out what to do about economic challenges, or the loss of jobs, or immigration, or healthcare, whatever the issue might be. So I think that when I'm in a very pessimistic mood, as I reflect on this problem, I feel that there really isn't any longer any substantive sense in which people on different sides of the political spectrum today are Americans. Yes, they are Americans in the legal sense that they're all Americans, but there's no sense in which they're all Americans that gives them a substantive way of moving together in an attempt to solve these problems through compromise. There's nothing like that. And I worry that the end result of that will be that the country cannot continue to exist. There may even be a civil war, but there will be a complete breakdown of the country. Maybe you're going to have two countries, one to the left, one to the right, Roosevelt land and Reagan land, or something like that. I don't know. But when I'm in a skeptical mood, I tend to feel that way. But there's also a more positive feeling that I have sometimes. And I have to be honest that this is a feeling that I had when I was in Tennessee, dealing with my mother's situation. And it's also a feeling that I have when I go to Mass as a Catholic person trying to be a Christian. And when I was in Tennessee, and when I go to Mass, there are people that I meet. There were people who helped me in Tennessee, and there are people who have been very kind to me and with whom I worship in church, who are Trump supporters. And when I'm in those contexts, I find that I'm able to look beyond their political views and some of these things that I've been discussing that I don't really understand, and I can see them as people, not as political partisans or as instances of a particular political type, but I can see them as people and maybe try to find some common ground with them there. So I find myself wavering between these two opposing attitudes, and I don't know what the final answer is. I don't have a solution here. I think probably it's better to try to go the second way, but then as a gay person and as a cross-dresser, I know that it's very difficult not to become angry when you realize that what some of these people on the other side of these issues want to try to do, apparently. So I don't have any neat solutions for you tonight. I just wanted to share how I'm feeling, and maybe it will prompt some of you to reflect on this, but that really is up to you, and you may not even agree with me about this. You may not agree with me about politics, but whatever you feel, wherever you come down on these questions, I thank you for being patient, and I ask you, please, I appreciate it when people like my videos. Thank you for watching. Even if you don't like them, I appreciate your taking the time to spend some time with me. So I wish everybody a thoughtful week, but most of all right now, I hope everybody will have a peaceful and a restful good night. So this is Katje thanking you again and saying goodbye.